Hi everyone, and welcome to the first video where we're going to be looking at the pages from the Gospel of Matthew. We're going to start by just saying this is the little image that I've created as the sort of title page, which we'll use each time. And jumping straight in, this is from a page that we're going to come on to where we'll talk about it a bit more, but this is a picture of Matthew writing his Gospel. In the actual image, in the comic proper, the words are going to be the correct words I'm going to transcribe. Right now I've just created this little image as a title page, and I've imported some of the Greek of the Gospel instead, just as a holder sort of thing. So he's just checking it through the Koine Greek there. Now, let's crack on. We're going to cover just the first few pages of the Matthew's Gospel. Okay, so the first one is this page where it's in every one of our books. At the start of the book, before it begins, it has a little quote from another part of the Bible. And so it's always from some different book. It's normally something that either encapsulates what the book is about or has a connection to a different book. In this case, a connection to a prophetic book about Jesus. But it's been all sorts. So in Judges, it was a proverb which encapsulated the theme of Judges, which was essentially every man does what's right in his own heart, but God in his own eyes, but God weighs the heart. Joshua was one about the Israelites, when God says it's not for your sort of righteousness that I give you the land, but because of the sin of the people there. And so we've got a little verse, and what I did was actually put this out there in the Facebook group for people to give suggestions about what would make a good verse for the book of Matthew. In Mark's Gospel, I used the quote from one of the epistles of Peter, where he talks about having been an eyewitness, because in that case it was Mark's Gospel is considered to be like Peter's Gospel in a way, and Mark was the one who wrote it down and recorded it all and everything, but it was Peter's story. And in this case, though, we have used a prophetic verse from the Old Testament and use it as an introduction for Matthew. So it's from Jeremiah 33:14-15. The days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will fulfill the good promise I made to the people of Israel and Judah in those days, and at that time I will make a righteous branch sprout from David's line. He will do what is just and right in the land. So it's a prophetic word about Jesus, pretty straightforward in a way that's about Jesus. It talks about the people of Israel and Judah, but also that he's descended from David, and as we'll see, we get one of the genealogies, which sort of the idea is to prove that he's descended from David, and the main reason is it talks about the branch, and because of this prophecy, the word in Hebrew is the netzer. The word, like translated, the word branch became like an idiom for the Messiah, and so we've got it here, but also because then Matthew uses it later to says, they said he'll be called a Nazarene. In fact, that was the page I was just drawing recently. And the link to the why they said, so the Matthew says, and he went to Nazareth and that's because the scriptures say he'll be called a Nazarene. And it's essentially this verse and one other where it talks about the Messiah being a branch, a Netzer, so it's like Nazarene. And so that's the connection as far as I understand it. But because Matthew is the one who uses the branch as the title of the Messiah was explained through Jesus, it was a good then choice for this one to use this one. Also, even if you don't know that, it reads quite well as a prophetic statement from Jeremiah, which lived hundreds of years before. So for somebody who's not into the Bible, you might be able to appreciate that this was a prophetic word about Jesus before he was born, and he still fulfills those things. Then the next page in the book is this one. It's not much to say. And then we have the map. Now the map we developed when we did Mark's Gospel, so it's the same one. The province of Judea, as the Romans called it. You've got the regions in colours showing you which of the kings was ruling in each area after the death of Herod. So I believe that all 4 colours were Herod's territory before he died, and then these 4 are actually during Jesus' actual ministry, these are how it is. When Jesus is born, obviously it's a bit different. The first procuratorship here is the region of Herod Archelaus, I think. But yeah, so you've got Philip, Antipas, accidentally, procuratorship, and the Syrian territory. Syrian territory being again a Roman province essentially. But yeah, so not much to say here. There's Nazareth and Jericho, Jerusalem, and but yeah, all the Roman provinces there. Now, I think this video will be slightly shorter than the others, but we'll see. Oh, let's turn off that. Now, it goes into the genealogy of Jesus, starting from Abraham, whereas Luke starts from Adam and Eve and everything, but goes down from Abraham. So, linking him to the original Hebrew patriarch. Now, so story-wise, it then goes through all those people: Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Judah, and then also Perez and then through Perez you've got Ram, Abinadab, and Nahshon. Nahshon's this guy. Nahshon's the father of Salmon, and Salmon and Rahab have Boaz. And sorry, I was just distracted there. So Boaz from the book of Ruth, with Ruth has Obed. Obed's the father of Jesse. Jesse is the father of King David. So that's the narrative. What I was going to say though was this also was good because I'd already done most of the genealogy of Jesus through the one in the book of Ruth. So here's the bit in question. In Ruth, it starts from Judah and goes same through all these. But what you'll notice is artistically then, we throughout this series use this sort of brown filter with red haze for something that's in the past, so like a flashback essentially. So sometimes, so in this case it's stuff that's happened in the past. sometimes it's characters telling you what's happened. So this one that comes to mind is in the sin of Achan in Joshua. They say, Achan, what happened? And he says, okay, well, I went in and I found this thing, and then it's drawn what happens as a flashback. And we just use that all the time for when things are in the past, and it helps then the reader realise, okay, well, this is past. So the point being, my point being that in this book, Ruth, the past goes up to Salmon and Rahab, which was in Joshua, and then Ruth and Boaz at the present, and then these you'll notice are in the purple, like pinky colour, purple, and then with the blue around the outside, and that is again a motif that we use for the prophetic stuff that's yet to happen. So in the case of the story of Ruth, Jesse and David were yet future. So I mean the book's obviously written when David's born and everything, but at the actual time of the book these are yet future, so it's telling you what's going to come after. So anyway, that was how it was there, so I was able to use that, but it's all in the past, you see. So now in the gospel, these bits are also in the brown, because they're also, in regards to Jesus' story, they're also backstory rather than current or anything like that. Now lastly, I'd already drawn Judah before, but I had also already drawn these guys, because so this is the book of Joshua. Now this isn't the bit, but Joshua's very old. This is the very end, and he's dying and everything, and he's prophesying about what's going to happen in the future, and then he's also talking about what's happening in the past. Sorry, it's not doing it right. The next page. Page, right? Oh, there. Right, sorry about that. So on this page, then Joshua, he speaks to the people, and he talks to them about the past prophetically, and again he prophesies, and you can see here he talks about your fathers live beyond the river, and they talk about Abraham. Then we've got a picture of Abraham. He talks about Isaac, and then Esau and Jacob. Esau's not relevant, but Jacob is, you see. So they were drawn there, so I've used the same images. The point is, obviously it saves me effort, but by using the same images, people, when they see it, they're like, oh, I've seen this one before, and then they think, oh, where did I see that? And they can go back, because there's a visual connection, it helps you to realise, oh, Joshua was talking about the same thing. Which is obvious if you know the Bible well, but if you don't, it just helps you, make that connection. And then obviously as well, when we actually do Genesis, they'll look the same. And again, it's just really helping people visually link together all the stories that we've got. Again, the same where this is the book of Joshua, this is the book of Ruth, and then when we eventually get around to doing Samuel and stuff, it'll be the same. And also in Exodus is Nahshon. So, he's going to come up in that. So we're laying the foundation then for that. Moving on to the next page, this was a bit more tricky to draw this time because it's going on from David into a bit that I just haven't covered at all, essentially. So I had to then draw all these and character design all the kings and everything, which are going to then be, set in stone for when we eventually do Kings, Chronicles, So we've got Solomon, and then Rehoboam, and then Abijah, and then Asa, and then we've got Jehoshaphat, and then we got Jehoram, and then we've got, it says the father of Uzziah. Okay. well, let's just read it through. Uzziah, father of Jotham, Jotham of Ahaz, and then we've got Ahaz, Hezekiah, Amnon, and then Josiah. Oh, sorry. Manasseh, Ammon, Josiah. Anyway, we'll come through that again. And then it talks about Jeconiah, and he gets carried off by the Babylonians. So that's this page. Now, going through it, like I say, I had to make up the character designs for these kings. So I did one for Solomon, trying to make him look, rich and regal, and a little bit multicultural as well. And I actually drew this picture bigger when there's all these silhouettes, because they were too busy. I just made them silhouettes. Just all his wives and stuff. So when again he comes up in the future, you probably see the wives and stuff back there. But he's got his purple robe and lions and eagles, and then there was this badge brooch that's gone through the previous page as well, where Nashon had it, and then he had it when he's actually in the comic. Boaz wore it, and then we've got David wearing it here. Again, it's just a little motif, which is telling you that they're kind of like father and son, like it's like family heirloom going down, and it's appearing in all these images. So yeah, you've got Solomon. He's got a long scepter. And then, as I say, I had to design Rehoboam. Basically, give him the same attire. So he's still, again, heirlooms. He's still wearing the same royal cloak and his what's the word? I don't know, but you know what I mean, necklace thing, and crown, and this throne is the same. But he and then also there's another motif, idiom type thing at play here, where essentially the bad kings have done in lots and lots of shadow, and the better kings have done in less shadow or none shadow. So he's got a lot of shadow on him. And then we've got Abijah, and he's a bad man. He puts up Asherah poles and stuff. So we've got a picture of Ishtar, or sorry, that's one of the names for this goddess. Asherah, I think, is what she's supposed to be called at the time as well. And then we've got Asa, and what we know about him is that he has gout. So I've given him bad feet. He has bad feet. And it's supposed to be gout, is what they believe it is. So that's what I've drawn him like. So he has all these big welts on his feet. He dies very old, so I've drawn him old. The thing is as well, when I draw these, I can choose. I could draw them as a baby, or I could draw them as an adult. What I can't do is draw them older than they are when they die. So I have to make sure I look at all the ages and stuff. Also see when they ruled, so again, I can draw them as a king, but I can't draw them as a king as a baby because they weren't king then. So you can see in the Bible, generally speaking, on almost all of them, it says, they came to the throne in this year, blah, blah, and you can work out, okay, well, they're 18, and then they ruled until they were like 60 or something like that. So Asa is one of the ones who actually lives quite a long time, so I chose to show him as a old man. And also doesn't say much about him apart from the fact he had the bad feet. And then we've got Jehoshaphat, and he is the one who prays, and when they're under siege, he's a good king, and they get sacked by Syrians, I believe, and then they pray and march out, singing songs of praise, and when they get there, all the people are dead, all their enemies and stuff. So I've got him praying because that's his iconic thing that he does. Then we've got Jehoram, in the silhouette here. He was a bad man. He murdered his rivals. Let me just think. Yeah, he came to the throne and then he killed all his brothers that could have rivaled him. So, he's a very bad man. So he's in silhouette. Now, actually, I guess I hadn't thought about this, but the idiom breaks down a little bit here, because what I've done is 4 silhouettes. Now, they're not silhouettes because they're bad, but they're silhouettes because we don't know anything about them. Rather, we do know about them. But what happens here is that Matthew compresses 4 kings under one name and then moves on. So he and it's slightly problematic, and so I wanted to imply that I was aware of it and that it was a thing, and so in actuality there are 4, but as ever I'm not explicitly adding my own notes, by the way, blah blah blah. Obviously in the video I'm telling you this is the case, but that would be the case if you researched it. If you when you compare the Old Testament, it has a different set of kings here, and I think the first and the last are both have a name of Uzziah, as in one of them is called Uzziah and then the other ones can be known as him or something like that, but they've got similar names. The point being that we don't actually know which one he's talking about. We imagine it's the Uzziah who goes into the temple and gets the leprosy and all that stuff, but but here we've got 4 and then they don't really connect, so you'll also notice that they don't overlap. So subtly we're saying that there's a bit of a break here, because if it's the first Uzziah, then obviously you must see 3 and then it goes on to Jotham. So that's why I did them in silhouette, because we don't know which of the 4 it will be that Matthew's talking about. So left it sort of ambiguous, but also by using the silhouettes I'm able to show that it's 4 rather than 1. Then we've got Jotham. It doesn't say much about him, so I've got just a big close up. Ahaz, bad man. He what's mostly bad about him is that he goes in with the enemies. So I've got him here wearing a Assyrian style necklace and jewelry and his hair and everything. He's in the style, so he's adopted the fashion of the enemy, and so it's to represent that he's sort of like friends with the enemy, essentially. Here we have Hezekiah being one of the good kings again, and then we've got Manasseh. Manasseh's a bad king, but he's here just shown as a child. I was trying to remember, why did I show it like this? I showed it like this because it believes that they co-reigned for a while. So when Hezekiah, was older, he then co-reigned with Manasseh, who was basically like a teen or a child or whatever, but he was king, and then there was an overlapping period. And it's interesting because that is kind of clear from the Bible, but what's interesting is that in the Egyptian records this happens quite a lot as well, and as a result it messes up the timeline, which is why you have differing opinions about the Egyptian timeline. And the reason that that's significant, I bring it up, is because a lot of history in this period particularly, and certainly Judges and all that, all the chronology of everything is hung on the Egyptian chronology. So it's like, in Greece this was happening and we believe it was this year because it ties in with the Egyptian calendar of this. And then it's like, and in Babylon this was happening, and then we believe that this king was contemporary with this king and therefore it was this year. But what happens is, because the Egyptian timeline is actually not very reliable, people like to say it's one of those things. If you're in any sort of field of study, there's normally something where it's like, here is a well-established fact. And then it's like, the more you learn about it, you're like, this well-established fact is not actually a fact. And all the stuff that hangs off of it, therefore, is not necessarily right. Just, I don't know, like as an example about light. People like light has a constant speed, and no matter what happens, it's always at a constant speed. And then they realise there's not a constant speed, and all the stuff that's built on light years and stuff like that is all like, oh wow, it's not quite perfect. It's similar. So they co-rule. So one of them's rule starts and the other one still hasn't ended, and so you can imagine in a timeline if people are like, oh, this king died and then his son took over, but they didn't realize there's a 10-year gap overlap. They would then put the start of one king's reign at the end of the other, and yet then miss the timeline by 10 years, skew it out by 10 years. And if this happens repeatedly, where you get a king and his son co-ruling, because they're like ruling together, and the son's getting more and more responsibility, and then when the king actually dies or retires, normally dies, the son then takes over completely. Anyway, so that's it. But that was why I drew it like that. Then you've got Amnon, and Amnon is a king, and he only rules for like a month or something, or 3 months possibly. Anyway, a couple of months or something, and then all his advisors don't like him and they stab him in the back. And it says that they kill him, and I've drawn him being stabbed in the back, so it reminds us a bit of Caesar, but also when you draw something, if you've drawn a person stabbed in the back, you can tell they've been murdered rather than being stabbed anywhere else. Stabbed in the front, they might have died in combat, but stabbed in the back, probably not. So he's got multiple wounds in the back, and he, not a great guy. And then his advisors, so you'll see that there's these silhouettes at either side, and then here there's also silhouettes. So these advisors who've killed this guy then install the son, and the son at the time is very young. He's like 8 or something. So I've drawn him. Again, he stays on the throne for a while. He's not always a child, but because it's noteworthy that he is a child when he takes the throne, I've drawn him as a child. I was originally going to have it so that the throne was gone and different, because Jerusalem gets sort of sacked and all the gold and stuff taken away. I thought, well, probably they're taking the throne, but then I thought, well, we don't know that they did, and as a device to show it's the same sort of throne, it's the throne of David. David established, they're still sitting on the same chair. Although I thought, possibly the chair's gone, I thought better to have it as a visual device for the fact that it's the same monarchy, because although the Israel monarchy goes off at a tangent in the Rehoboam period, you've got this is the line of Judah, so this is the throne that they're sitting on. So I thought I'd keep it as the device there. So that explains why I drew it. And then this will probably be our last one. This one, now hopefully you've seen this in the book of Esther, and I've linked it. I thought it was nice to link it because it talks about the fact that Jeconiah, who you can't necessarily see in the picture, is taken with his brothers at the time of the exile to Babylon. And again, it's got a physical break. They're all overlapping each other, these pictures. Well, I was talking about a second ago, overlap. These are literally, that's the son of that one, and that's the son of that one. And that here there's actually a break, because again, there's a king missing between Josiah and Jeconiah. So I put a little gap. But, what can you do? Like, that's the way that Matthew's pitched it. So I've tried to sort of show it Matthew's way, but have little hints that there's, that it's not the way it is in the Old Testament. Now, but the picture here, this is Nebuchadnezzar, and this is them getting all exiled, and the people of Jerusalem and stuff getting taken away. So people would be including like Daniel, and in theory, Mordecai's grandfather or something, I can't remember. But Mordecai's descendant and stuff. Ancestor. The picture, though, is the same one again from Esther. And again, it saves me from drawing it. But it is useful to use the same image because you're like, oh, hold on a minute, I've seen this before in Esther. And then you could be like, oh, okay, so what we're talking about is Jeconiah, because it tells you it's the exile stuff, but you're like, okay, this Jeconiah links with Mordecai's grandfather or whatever. It's that's the same time period. So actually you can jump forward and think, oh, Mordecai, so I intentionally use the same pictures to try and help people make those connections. Like, oh, this was in Esther, it's part of the same story, developing onwards. So that was what so that's what I did, and that's how I did the genealogy. We're going to finish the genealogy next time with the next page, which is from the exile down to Joseph and Jesus. So thanks very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this little video talking about the history, but also the reasons, the way I've drawn things. I guess what we didn't talk about is the historical referencing of things, and which is all part of it, like the chariot here and the style of the helmets and that sort of thing. A lot of that's been covered in the previous videos, so feel free to check out the ones from Esther and everything. And so I hope you've enjoyed this video, and we'll see you next time. If you're a patron, thanks for being a patron. If you're on YouTube, like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.